Hey loves, it's Brid, and in this video I'm going to talk about what it means to have the Sun square to Uranus in Synastry. So I'm excited to talk about this one. I feel like this is probably one of the hardest aspects in Synastry that you could have. I would consider it to be a karmic aspect because yeah, it can just be quite difficult that you're going to learn a lot of lessons from it. So, the interesting thing about the square is that we're both very fascinated with each other, especially at the start. It creates just as much excitement, exhilaration as the conjunction or the opposition. But over time, with the square, it turns out to be more difficult with more conflict. And the reason for that is because nobody wants to back down. So we have the sun, which is our ego and our identity, and our light. And, a big part of our personality being square with Uranus, which is the part of us that is the rebel or individualistic or definitely not wanting to back down. And so when these planets come together in a square, it's not so much that the arguments are really bad, but it's just if there is arguments, nobody wants to back down. Um, and the sun person can feel really judgy towards the Uranus person. They can see them as irresponsible or erratic or immature, or they can have a lot of judgments towards the Uranus person. And the Uranus person can feel like they're being judged because they are in some cases. But they can feel really restricted, and like the sun person is always trying to give them advice, and they kind of feel like they're above that advice. Like it's very interesting, like how the Uranus person reacts is like, you're telling me that, like take a look at yourself, and it it's yeah, it can get very heated because we have two, in a sense, kind of stubborn parts of ourselves squaring off at each other. So, with an otherwise like really good synastry with lots of other understanding in other places, this aspect just creates a level of tension and excitement and exhilaration because we're relating with someone who is different for us. It's challenging for us, but it's also actually quite common in relationships that are shorter term, or more sporadic associations. We're not living together, but it does sometimes happen in long term relationships also to have this aspect, so don't be discouraged. But it only will work when the personalities, there's only certain personality types that are more allowing of differences, right? So you have to be really open minded and allowing each other to be who you are in this relationship. Because, see, that's the issue, is that at times it can seem like they're both taking issue with each other, and just their, like, the sun person's like very being is very irksome to Uranus, and Uranus's way of being is actually downright like scary, or like, that's not the right word, but very jarring to the sun person, very like putting them on edge, like they're having to deal with this person who is reckless and impulsive, and like Uranus maybe these things, but it might just be that sun, because of how ingrained their ego is, perceives Uranus to be this way, right? And so if this is occurring with other good synastry aspects and people that are more open-minded, and also tolerance, that's a big one for this, is having tolerance towards each other, like letting each other be themselves. So this can work when, the sun person is not super judgy and lets Uranus kind of go with the flow, and maybe Uranus isn't around all the time. This can be like like a long distance relationship, or a relationship that looks different, for whatever reason. There's something eccentric about this couple, right? That's what, if you do see it in relationships that are working, there's still something different about this union, right? Because it's a difficult aspect. And, sometimes what you'll see, because like my generation, I'm a little bit later, but I still have the conjunction within 5 degrees or so. But the Uranus conjunct Neptune generation, so like the early 1990s, late 1980s birth dates, you'll have, like, when you have this square, it's also squared in Neptune too. So the person's sun, whoever's sun has got their sun square to the other person's Uranus and Neptune, and you'll see that's really tough. I'll talk about sun square Neptune too. That's another really interesting aspect. But in that case, that's really hard on the sun person, and you want to have some other aspects to that person's sun. Otherwise, they're going to feel really like confused by the Uranus or Neptune person. But anyways, that's a side note. But yeah, this aspect, when we fight, you both really just let it go, and it can get really nasty. And the Uranus person, like I said, can kind of feel like after a while that, like, they're above the sun person. Like, it's like, what is even the point of me sticking around and arguing with you and trying to be understood by you? Like, it's just not worth it. So the Uranus person can often be the one that initiates the breakup, because they just don't want to feel controlled or inhibited by the sun person anymore. And the Uranus person sometimes will be the one prone to the more, the breaking up or the leaving, or the erratic actions. Like, sometimes that can be true, that the Uranus person is the one that's going to end this because they don't like the way that it feels. And, later on, both of them may realize that this union was better at a distance. You got to give each other a lot of space. Maybe this one aspect, if it's contained within another bunch of messy aspects, can be just very difficult, and not like, the two people may end up feeling like, this is just not worth it. This is not worth the suffering I'm enduring to be in this relationship. Now, on the positive side, it's a really exciting relationship, and it's definitely a relationship that opens the sun person's mind. The very way of being of the Uranus person is so revolutionary, or so, like, fascinating and confusing and eccentric and different and weird, that the sun person will never be the same. And their ego has changed, their confidence has changed, hopefully for the better, sometimes for the worse. So it's definitely a life-changing contact, a karmic contact. All Sun Uranus contacts seem to get two people together that don't have a lot in common really quickly. Now, the square is no different, except I think more than in any of the other aspects, the breakup happens quickly with the square, and it can happen so fast that you look back and think, like, what even happened? Like, what was that, right? It's the Sun Uranus square. So I'd love to know your experience of this aspect. Was it like this? Was it not like this? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching, you guys. Bye.